My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
We will give you more. More news. More talk. More Noam. It's Noam's News.
Is that me? I'm on? Good morning. Okay, I'll take it from here. It is Friday, February 28th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine today, high 49. And then the weekend, well, it's a mixed bag. Saturday, sun and clouds, high 57. Sunday, sunshine, much colder, high 33. If you are walking out the door with us right now, it is 38 and clear in New City up in Rockland County. It is 34 and clear in Kinnelon over in New Jersey. And it is 42 and partly cloudy right outside our Midtown studios.
The top 5 at 5.
Police still unsure how Gene Hackman, his wife, and their dog died. 2 more Democrats could jump into the crowded race for mayor this weekend. 25% of New York City residents don't have enough money to put a meal on the table every night. What is killing geese and birds out on Long Island? And a Queens woman gets a $20,000 water bill. All right, let's jump right into it. The deaths of Academy Award-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife now being ruled suspicious, but they're not giving us a whole lot more of why they decided that. Santa Fe County Sheriff Adon Mendoza says foul play has now not been ruled out. Now, remember, yesterday they told us there was no foul play.
We're not ruling it out. What I did state was there was no obvious sign or indication of a foul play. There was no immediate sign of foul play. Haven't ruled that out yet. This is an investigation, so we're keeping everything on the table. I think the autopsy is going to tell us a lot. Hackman
and his wife of more than 3 decades found dead in their Santa Fe home yesterday. But officials say they could have been deceased for some time. A search affidavit released says the deaths are suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation now.
All I can say is they have been deceased for quite a while. That's a determination that's better suited for OMI and the experts, but it sounds like they had been deceased for a while, and I don't want to take a guess in reference to how long that was.
Mendoza says the front door was open when the bodies of Hackman and his wife were found.
I don't know if that was if it was left ajar. There was no indication of a struggle. There was no indication of anything that was missing from the home or disturbed. That would be indication that there was a crime that had occurred. There was no indication of that.
There is so much that's odd about this story, but it may not lead up to anything that's suspicious in the end. But no cause of death, of course, provided. They're still working on it. One of the couple's dogs was also found dead, while the 2 others were found healthy. So there were 2 other dogs in the house that were fine. Mendoza says they worked through the day yesterday investigating. Of course, Hackman's 95 years old, his wife 63 years old. And then an interesting sideline note from his daughter. His youngest daughter speaking out yesterday about her father's health in the months leading up to his death. She said Leslie Hackman, who's 58 years old, said she had not talked to the Oscar winner or her stepmother in a couple of months before their passing. Now, she didn't suggest that she had any sort of awkward relationship with him, but a couple months suggests that maybe she did. But she said they were in very good physical condition. That's as far as she knew. So, of course, the investigation continues. And was there something sinister here? Or did something else happen? Or was it carbon monoxide? They just really don't know yet. 5:04, let's bring it back home. Governor Hochul trying to convince President Trump that congestion pricing is helping New York City, and she wants the White House to back off on its effort to kill the program. Hochul talking more yesterday about the in-person meeting she had with President Trump last Saturday. She sat at the White House for an hour trying to convince him not to sink congestion pricing.
More than anyone, he's got property here. He understands we want to make sure that the city keeps moving. So I was just trying to appeal to him as a New Yorker and say, this is good for New York.
But Hochul says Trump told her that congestion pricing is a terrible tax. The White House ordered New York to stop collecting congestion tolls beginning March 21st after the federal approval the city removed was taken away. Hochul says the state not going to obey that order. They will keep the cameras rolling.
I'm saying I'm going to have an orderly resistance. We are not turning off the cameras. Delayed buses are now down 48%. Kids are getting to school sooner. It has had a profound impact on the lives of New Yorkers. We have to fight to keep it going, and that's why I'm taking it to the courts.
Yes, so a judge is expected to hear arguments on both sides in the coming weeks. If it can't be decided there, it'll be awfully interesting if we get to that March 21st deadline to see exactly what happens. The Speaker of the New York City Council may be jumping into the race for mayor now.
Council Speaker Adrienne Adams Thursday announced she's formed an exploratory committee and expects to decide whether to run after she delivers her State of the City address on Tuesday. Speaker Adams says Mayor Adams, no relation, is, quote, diminished, and that his perceived loyalty to Donald Trump cripples his ability to work for New Yorkers. She added she's got far more experience in local government than potential candidate Andrew Cuomo. Besides the possibility of the former governor and two Adamses in the race, there are 5 other major Democrats running. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
Those protests continuing at Barnard College, Upper Manhattan, after pro-Palestinian demonstrators took over a campus building on Wednesday. Yesterday, anti-Israel students faced off against pro-Israel protesters on the campus as police stood by. Here's some members of Columbia Students for Justice in Palestine.
I just hope we can have equality on campus.
Very much in support of what is happening.
So yesterday, members of the group took over Millbank Hall, which houses the dean's office, for about 7 hours, allegedly attacked an employee there who tried to stop them. Their demands include reinstating 2 students who were expelled recently. Those 2 students were expelled for breaking into a Israel history class and disrupting the class, scaring the students there. This Jewish student finds the pro-Palestinian protests very unsettling, much like they were last year.
Honestly, it was very frustrating to me and a little bit scary as a Jewish student to hear, globalize the Intifada, to hear from the river to the sea, to hear that Barnard, the college that I love so much, is a fascist institution.
Now, when you talk to students in general who are not involved in either side, they say it just disrupts campus. Some professors canceling classes yesterday. Imagine paying $60,000 a year, maybe more, to go to Columbia to find out your class is canceled over a protest happening over what's going on in the Middle East. Here were some students speaking out yesterday.
Support the demand for the reinstatement of these students, and I don't know what's going to come out of those negotiations.
Can you imagine going to class with all this going on behind you and professors choosing to cancel class for a cause they support that you don't necessarily support?
Yeah, that'd be a little crazy. 5:07, a first check of traffic and transit on this early Friday morning. Good morning, Joe Nolan.
I had enough trouble learning. All that
right. Oh, my God. I was so easily distracted.
Oh, I am too. I wouldn't be paying any attention at all to what I'd be looking out the window the whole time.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, from the Ray Katina, that's part of the news thing too in me, So anyway.
What, that you can't keep a thought, or what do you mean?
No, I'm just saying, I would, that too. Yeah, well, yeah.
You have ADHD too?
No.
Oh.
Okay. But I have trouble sometimes focusing. From the RayKatina.com.
You do a good job with traffic. You don't seem to get off kilter.
Well, it's because it's automatic. It's autopilot. 46 years of this, Yeah. Anyway. From the RayKatina.
Unless I interrupt you, then it might be a little difficult.
Let me just say this so I don't get yelled at for not doing it. From the RayKatina.com traffic desk.
WABC News Time 5:09. Home sales are now down to the lowest level on record.
Pending sales dropped 4.6% in January, the lowest since the National Association of Realtors began tracking it in 2001. NAR's chief economist said the coldest January this century could have contributed to fewer buyers in the market. But high home prices and mortgage rates have also strained affordability. I'm Brian Shook.
Doctors down in Texas treating this massive measles outbreak, trying to correct a statement that was made by President Trump's health secretary, RFK Jr., who suggested that the patients down in Texas were merely being just quarantined. But doctors there say, no. The people we have in the hospital here are sick with the measles.
We don't hospitalize patients for quarantine purposes. We admit patients who need acute supportive treatment.
That's Dr. Laura Johnson. She says about 24 measles patients are at Covenant Health in Lubbock, and she says they're being treated with everything from emergency oxygen to medicine to bring down high fever.
Which is primarily because of the respiratory issues going to be respiratory support. So supplemental oxygen, maybe high flow oxygen.
And of course, the fears grow larger as one school-aged child in Texas who was not vaccinated, who has passed away.
Most of the time, patients are certainly have high fevers. We're going to give medicines for the fever. They may need IV fluids and support in that fashion.
And now we have an alert in Bergen County for measles after 3 people in Bergen County have contracted measles. WABC News Time 5:11. It'll be interesting to see if this boycott that's been called for today will actually work. They're calling it economic resistance. That's the boycott. And it's all about a couple things. One is they say Walmart and Amazon have too much power, so they've called for this 24-hour boycott of big corporations. They're also upset that President Trump's move to abolish these DEI programs and that some of these corporations has gone along with them. So there's a 24-hour boycott that began at midnight earlier today, 5 hours ago, and will go to midnight tonight. Now, the question is, will this really work? Will it make a difference?
I feel like boycotting for a day or avoiding buying is one really easy way to get involved in the movement to kind of show that we're not happy with what's happening.
One day does not a boycott make.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that. They say if you're going to try to do a boycott, you got to do it for a long period of time. But in my lifetime, I can only think of one boycott that actually worked.
I think my bigger issue with all of this is the fact that it has made me realize how dependent we are on these large corporations. And I think now is the time for us to say, where does that shift look like?
Yeah, so they're going to boycott places like Target, Amazon, big shopping stores. We don't have any sense of how many people are involved in this, whether it'll make any economic difference at all.
Either cut us in or cut it out. We don't have to shop everywhere. And so we're going to be talking about how do we diversify our spending.
Yes, we reached out to some of these corporate stores, these chains, to see if they had any thoughts on this. Nobody got back to us because I don't think they're too frightened of it. 5:13, House Republicans are charging ahead with a plan that would bring significant changes to Medicaid, and Democrats are pushing back at this. Republicans are doing this because they say it's not sustainable the way it is now, but Democrats claim that the cuts will go too far.
The Republican budget calls for $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts to pay for tax breaks for the very wealthy.
Yeah, Democrats claim the cuts to Medicaid would have serious consequences, particularly in outlying communities.
They're taking away your Medicaid to line the pockets of the wealthiest Americans who are controlling our government. It means the closure of hospitals and seniors denied coverage in long-term care.
But Republicans say they're going to run out of money. At issue is a cap on the amount of money states receive to run their own Medicaid programs. 5:13, a pair of social media influencers who are brothers remain under investigation in Romania for human trafficking and sex with a minor. And they made their way back to the United States yesterday. Now, you may not recognize their names, but good chance your kids, your grandkids will know exactly who they are. Andrew and Tristan Tate arrived at the Fort Lauderdale airport yesterday, and they maintain they have done nothing wrong and did nothing wrong in Romania.
We've yet to be convicted of any crime in our lives ever. We have no criminal record anywhere on the planet ever. Our case was dismissed on the 19th of December in Romania under the Biden administration. And our prosecutor recently decided, because we have no active indictment in court, to let us go.
However, the brothers are expected in a Romanian court next month. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis not happy at all to learn that Andrew and Tristan Tate are in Florida. I don't know that he's going to do much about it, but he was really upset.
Florida is not a place where you're welcome with that type of conduct.
Now, the Tate brothers are big supporters of President Trump and the Trump administration, and the Trump White House has apparently been reportedly pushing for their travel restrictions to be lifted, and that might be part of the reason they headed to Florida yesterday. But DeSantis says they're not welcome in Florida.
Our Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, is looking at what state hooks and jurisdiction we may have to be able to deal with this. And I don't know how it came to this. We were not involved. We were not notified. I found out through the media.
WABC News Time 5:15. Let's go down to Washington. President Trump says a lot of progress being made to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Spoke at a joint news conference yesterday with Prime Minister Starmer, the UK Prime Minister. Trump says groundwork is being laid for a ceasefire deal between the two sides.
As I discussed with Prime Minister Starmer, the next step we're making is toward a very achievable ceasefire. We hope that can happen quickly.
Ukrainian President Zelensky, he'll be at the White House this morning to sign this minerals deal they came up with. The minerals deal will help pay down the debt President Trump says Ukraine owes the U.S. for all the military aid they've received from America during the 3-year war.
Tomorrow, the progress toward peace will continue when President Zelensky visits the White House. He'll be here tomorrow in the early part of the day, and we'll be signing a historic agreement that will make the United States a major partner in developing Ukraine's minerals and rare earths.
And the UK Prime Minister Starmer praising Trump for his efforts to get a ceasefire deal between Ukraine and Russia.
You've created a moment of tremendous opportunity to reach a historic peace deal, a deal that I think would be celebrated in Ukraine and around the world. That is the prize. But we have to get it right.
And now King Charles inviting President Trump for a state visit to the United Kingdom.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer brought a letter from Charles to Trump during their meeting Thursday in the Oval Office. Trump said the king is a wonderful man. Trump accepted the invite to Windsor Castle. This would be the first state visit of Trump's second term. I'm Brian Shook.
WABC News Time 5:19. Let's go out to California. The family of the Menendez brothers speaking out to advocate for their release from prison. Their cousin says they've expressed a ton of remorse for years, and many people have highlighted the positive things they've done behind bars.
Inmates, corrections officers, and administrators have all gone on record to say Eric and Lyle have been model people while incarcerated.
Now, yesterday we told you California Governor Gavin Newsom ordered the parole board to investigate whether releasing the brothers would pose a threat to the public. So the cousins, of course, very excited by that news.
They are a positive step forward towards Eric and Lyle's release. We are incredibly grateful that Governor Newsom is paying attention to this case, particularly those of us those older family members.
Now, if you haven't followed this story, it goes back decades. The Menendez brothers were sentenced to life in prison without parole all the way back in 1989 for the murder of their parents. The brothers say they had been abused by their father for years. The cousins say that should have been part of the trial. It was not. And now they say these brothers have done enough time and should be released.
It is a huge sigh of relief that someone in a seat of power is paying attention.
Yeah, so ultimately it looks like the parole board will have the final say on this. And if they say, okay, let the brothers go, Gavin Newsom says, yeah, he'll let those brothers out from prison. 5:20, while we're in California, actor Mel Gibson going to join the effort now to recall Governor Newsom over his handling of the wildfires in Los Angeles. Gibson lost his home in Malibu. He spoke out in Altadena yesterday with a group that calls itself Saving California. He also took aim at LA's mayor as well.
We deserve much more and much better, and there is absolutely no adequate excuse the governor or mayor can make for this gross mismanagement and failure to preemptively deal with what they knew was coming.
Gibson questioning whether it was incompetence, indifference, or just downright negligence. He says any federal aid that comes into California should come with some sort of investigation tied to it. 5:21 over in the Middle East, the final planned swap of phase 1 of the Gaza ceasefire has taken place. Correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv.
There were hundreds of Palestinian prisoners who are being released from Israeli jails, while at the same time, late last night, we saw 4 dead bodies of slain hostages, Israelis, being released by Hamas from the Gaza Strip, transferred through the Red Cross.
Israeli authorities completed forensic tests confirming the identities of those 4 dead hostages. That cleared the way for the release of more than 600 Palestinian prisoners. We are watching on as buses carrying those prisoners were seen leaving a prison yesterday. Last week in Israel had delayed the release of prisoners amid outrage over the way Hamas was handing over these hostages with those grand ceremonies. Now, these latest hostages, the dead ones that were handed over, there were no ceremonies.
The Israelis saying earlier in the week that they were not going to be releasing those hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. They said because they wanted to see Hamas put an end to what they called the humiliating ceremonies when it comes to handing over these prisoners.
Now, this is end of phase one of this ceasefire deal. Phase two would be a whole lot more difficult.
We just heard Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, has deployed diplomats to Cairo to try to negotiate a move from phase one to phase two. That would see a more permanent truce and possibly the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip.
WABC News Time 5:22. Spring break is well underway. And if you're not in Florida, there's no understanding of how big this is in some of the areas where beach towns attract so many college students this time of year. So much so that at Tampa International Airport, they say it is like Thanksgiving travel over the next couple weeks. That's how bad it is getting in and out of the airport. And every year they go through this drill like we do here for Thanksgiving, warning people that it's going to be hard to get in and out of the airport.
Get here early, check your bags. Be mindful with what's in your bags.
Of course, that's great for business. Not everybody, of course, in Florida loves it, but the bar owners, the hotels, other attractions love this time of year.
Don't check your firearms, the sharp objects. Go on the website. Know what can go in and out of that bag so you can move expeditiously.
Yeah, it's the same drill we go through Thanksgiving, reminding people, hey, if you want to get through, you got to do this.
It can be upwards of 20 to 30 minutes at those surge peak times.
Yeah. So anyway, they expect millions to come down over the next 2 months or so for it's about a month and a half for spring break. Blue Origin's upcoming flight to space will feature a group of famous faces. The rocket company, which of course is owned by Jeff Bezos, announcing yesterday that Katy Perry, you heard there, along with Gayle King and Lauren Sanchez, who is Bezos' girlfriend, will be part of the next crew. They'll be joined by a NASA rocket scientist, a bioastronautics research scientist. Launch date hasn't been announced, but the all-female crew is expected to go in space for that 10-minute flight sometime in the spring. WABC News Time 5:24. A rare planetary alignment going to happen later today.
Stargazers will be able to see 7 planets form a line in the sky just after dusk. The hardest planets to see with the naked eye will be Saturn and Neptune, and NASA officials suggest a pair of high-powered binoculars or a telescope to get a full view. The best chance of viewing all 7 planets will be in places free of light pollution and in areas with an unobstructed view of the horizon. I'm Mark Mayfield.
You're going to need to be 21 years old. It's 21 to buy a beer in Texas. It'll be 21 soon to get your hands on nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide has become huge among teenagers to get high off of. The restrictions on the laughing gas, supported by the Texas Medical Association.
We encourage evidence-based policies that will prevent youth access to these harmful substances.
These companies that sell the nitrous oxide, they're totally trying to sell it to kids. They have different flavors now, I mean, much different than it was years ago. It's a direct ploy to get kids into doing what's called whippets. These are the canisters that normally go in a whipped cream can, and they become immensely popular. So they're trying to take it out of the hands of kids by putting this age restriction of being 21 to do something dopey like that.
It can lead to permanent brain damage, permanent spinal cord injury, and addiction.
Yeah, so they're hoping that 21 age will change things a little bit, at least in Texas. 526, a Grammy-winning Latin band canceling concerts after it was threatened in Tijuana with a severed head.
Mexican regional band Grupo Firme was scheduled to perform in Mazatlan on March 1st. A Mexican newspaper says the group canceled the show after a large banner appeared alongside a Tijuana highway on Tuesday, threatening to kill the band members if they performed. Beside the banner was a box containing an unidentified human head. Authorities suspect the message came from a drug cartel. Mexican police say there have been a number of death threats against performing artists in recent years, allegedly made by the cartels. I'm Michael Kastner.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noah Layden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noah
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5:34. Good morning. It is Friday, February 28th, thank God. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Just a beautiful day on the way. Sunshine, high 49. The weekend looks like this. Saturday, sun and clouds, high 57. And then Sunday, we return to winter. Sunshine, much colder, high 33. If you are walking out the door with us right now, so happy you are. 38 clear in New City up in Rockland County. 35 and clear in Kinnelon over in New Jersey. And it's 41 and clear right outside our Midtown studios. We'll start this half hour right here in the city, where City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams taking another big step towards officially entering the race for mayor. She formed an exploratory committee, could officially announce a run for mayor in a matter of days. She says she's getting into the race to save the city from Mayor Adams.
We need an administration that can sound the alarm about what is at stake and work with the city's partners to protect New Yorkers. The stakes are too high for us to have a diminished mayoral administration.
City Council President Adams says New York is under attack and that Mayor Eric Adams, by the way, there's no relation between the two, is unwilling or unable to protect the city.
Who has the experience right now on day one to come in, who's been working with the agencies, who's been working with the administrative leadership right now. And I've been that person.
And she says Mayor Adams' perceived loyalty to the White House cripples his ability to advocate on the behalf of New Yorkers. But Mayor Adams says, bring it on. He says the more candidates, the merrier.
You got all these folks that are in the race. I can care less. You know, I got the crown. They're trying to get the crown that I have.
Now, if she won, Adrienne Adams, she would become the first ever female mayor of New York City.
I intend to be that voice, strong and steady, unapologetically, speaking up for the for New Yorkers, the voice for the voiceless that we need right now.
Okay, so she may announce in the coming days. The other big announcement could come as soon as this weekend. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo expected to jump in the race maybe as soon as Sunday. WABC News Time 5:39. We're being told today there may be a path out of the ongoing wildcat strikes by prison guards across the New York state.
Late Thursday, the mediator brought in to handle the dispute between prison guards and the state issued a consent award, essentially ending negotiations that includes some of the concessions guards were seeking. But there may be a snag. Since the strike was not authorized by the union representing the guards may have to individually accept the deal in order to return to work. Governor Hochul released a statement praising the consent award. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
WABC News Time 540. A report from Columbia University and Robin Hood Foundation finds a quarter of New York City residents don't have enough money to meet just basic needs.
It's always been crazy. It is getting worse. It's New York City.
The price of, everything else is going up except our paycheck.
Everyone's trying to figure it out because everything is just getting more and more expensive.
I feel like I'm getting pushed out and I don't want to be here anymore.
They're making it a billionaire playground.
This report finds nearly 60% of New Yorkers had incomes that were 200% below the poverty line, with residents saying they can't afford housing, food, even a doctor's appointment. According to the report, the poverty threshold, a family with 2 children renting in New York City, was $47,000. That doesn't seem even close to enough to live in New York City. The report also found that 26% of New York City's children currently live in poverty. Governor Kathy Hochul says she is committed now to imposing a statewide cell phone ban in schools. She speaking out yesterday in front of some students and educators across the state.
I will be the heavy. I will impose this statewide. So there's no question that this is a uniform policy. And at the end of some period of time, we will see a totally different class of young people emerging.
Governor Hochul says she has spoken to a number of school psychologists who say the minute you get rid of these phones from bell to bell, it brings down bullying, drama in the classroom, and kids are paying attention not just to the teacher but to one another because they're not staring at their phone all day.
More high functioning, more well adjusted, less mental health problems, and actually graduate with friends. something that I think is long lost. And so I'm excited. It's going to be tough.
Yeah. Apparently, it won't be easy to get it through the state legislature, but she says she's going to try and do it. Meanwhile, up in the Bronx, Preston high school students holding a rally following the sudden announcement that their high school is going to close come June at the end of this year. Students, parents making their appeal to the board, the trustee board of the school to keep the school open, but they say they just don't have enough money to do that.
He made me the person that I am today. I'm a nurse practitioner in the Bronx, and I live down the block, and it means everything, school.
The news came unexpectedly to students, parents, and teachers and alumni earlier this week. The school, Preston School, has been around 75 years. Board of Trustees says declining enrollment and really financial struggles have just played a huge role in this decision. But as you might guess, students who are in the school right now say, at least let us graduate. You know, the 9th through 12th grade, but that's not going to happen, apparently.
The very least that they could have done is at least let the kids who are actually already in the school is let them graduate.
My mother was class of 1973. My aunt was 1974. My other aunt was 1977. And my niece here is going to be 2032.
Now, there is a thought they're going to put this building on the market to be sold because it's in a relatively nice neighborhood.
And they're taking away all our Catholic schools in this neighborhood. And they're building condos and casinos that we don't need. And we need to save Preston.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. 543, the Federal Bureau of Prisons have suspended social visits at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Sunset Park. Now, we're not getting clear word why this happened. We did hear over the weekend there was a huge fight that included multiple incarcerated individuals and that some needed medical treatment. And that might be the reason they've stopped visits from families from the outside. But families showing up, we didn't know about that, are greeted with a piece of paper on the front door that says they're not allowed in the building right now.
It feels scary. Like I said, is he alive? Is he breathing? We just want to know that he's okay. He has family members. He has kids. He has 3 children. And they can't do anything. We all feel helpless.
Now, what prison officials did tell us is that they are on modified operations, which I don't really completely understand, since the thing happened over the weekend. And they say if an inmate is seriously ill, family will be notified. But in the meantime, they can't go inside the prison.
They're human beings. Yes, they're being held here, but we just want to know that he's okay. He's been to the hospital multiple times from being here anyway. He tells us that he's scared. He doesn't speak English very well. He only speaks Spanish, so he doesn't really understand everything or even his rights.
This is far from the first time, by the way. MDC has closed its doors for social visits. During COVID, of course, they did so. And there was recently some security reasons that they shut down families from visiting. Not clear how long this is going to last. A measles alert has been issued by the New Jersey Department of Health after 3 cases of the highly contagious virus confirmed in Bergen County. An unvaccinated resident diagnosed with measles after they returned from an international trip, and then they spread it to 2 close contacts. So they're trying to keep this from breaking out even further. Doctors say you just got to either roll up your sleeve and get vaccinated or be extra careful.
A little over 20 years ago, this was declared eradicated from the continental United States. However, we do still see sporadic cases.
So, of course, there's lots of fears about measles because there's so many cases in Texas. More than 120 people, mostly unvaccinated kids, have come down with the virus. 1 child died this week. A couple dozen still in the hospital today. And so the state, New Jersey, is using contact tracing now to notify people who might have been exposed to this individual who was overseas and then came back with measles because they don't want the outbreak to become like it is in Texas.
This is a highly contagious disease, but exceptionally preventable.
Yeah, that's the same doctor from a local hospital. According to the CDC, more than 93% of New Jersey 5-year-olds had received the MMR vaccine for the 23 to 24 school year. But, of course, that leaves 7% who did not receive the vaccine.
My fear is mostly the children because we're adults, so I've already been vaccinated mostly. So it scares me for my kids.
Yeah. 546, let's go out to Long Island, a beachside community in Suffolk County, really worried about dozens of dead birds that have washed up on shore and have been found in backyards, especially because officials believe the birds have died from bird flu, avian flu. It is Patchogue Shores, which is in East Patchogue. It's a private beach community. And this guy tells us that he was walking along the beach earlier this week and he could not believe how many dead birds he found.
I know there was 3 seagulls, 1 cormorant, and I got a count of 11. I think they're bufflehead ducks.
He contacted the Department of Environmental Conservation. The DEC says it appears to be avian flu because there have been cases in Suffolk County and Nassau County before. They're urging people in this close-knit beach community to avoid, of course, any contact with these dead birds.
If you see dead birds, the first thing you should do is protect yourself and stay away from them. Currently, there's not much evidence that this particular strain will go into humans.
Yeah, so bird-to-human transmission has been extremely low. The avian flu can be spread by direct contact through saliva and secretion, so they just want you to stay off the beach until they figure out what's exactly going on. We've seen this in a bunch of places across the tri-state. You remember even just nearby in Suffolk County at the Crescent Duck Farm, they had to euthanize 100,000 ducks, almost essentially putting this guy out of business because the flu was roaming through the flock there. And people who live in this beach town, they're worried. They say, is it okay to go back out on the beach?
It's very frightening, obviously. And I'm not quite sure what we can do about it at this point, other than just stay away. But that becomes very difficult when you live down here.
Yeah, the DEC says they're doing everything they can to figure out where this all came from. They think the birds came from another town. Meanwhile, people who live on the beach here, they say, the greatest part about being there is watching the wildlife.
It's upsetting because people enjoy this. This is like the one place where everyone who lives here enjoys, or like at least it's something to have. It's special because it's private.
Yeah, for now, they're saying people just be careful on that beach. WABC News Time, 5:50. Let's go out to Queens. A Queens woman, a grandmother, has a $20,000 water bill. And she says her efforts to dispute those charges have been unsuccessful. After 86 years of living in Queens, Margaret McGowan says she knows how to maintain her home. So when this water bill arrived, she was just bowled over, stunned that it could be $20,000. She says normally the bill, of course, is just a couple $100.
My normal bill historically was $200 to $300 a quarter, and this was $20,000. And then she told me it wasn't a mistake, that's the reading.
Yes, so she appealed this. She says, this is crazy. I live in a house by myself. I can't be using that much water. It's impossible. But the New York City Department of Environmental Protection has denied 2 appeals, and they've upheld these charges. Technicians even visited the property several times to confirm all equipment is working properly. They said that maybe there was some sort of significant water leak that Margaret was missing, but they couldn't find one, of course. And then, interestingly enough, and this is the bizarre part of the story, they fixed her, or they put in new equipment that monitors how much water comes into the house, and then her bill went back down to normal, which would suggest that there was something wrong with the equipment, but they're still telling her that she has to pay this $20,000. So other people are coming in to try to help her, including New York State Senator John Liu.
This is a classic case of government gone awry. He is claiming that this woman used enough water to fill 10 swimming pools every single month for 2 years. I mean, it's just inexplicable.
And this poor woman, she lives by herself. She's a widow, and so easily resolved. It's clear that she doesn't owe $20,000. There's no leak in the house. They couldn't find one. And when they changed out the equipment, her bill went back down to normal. So why are we still talking about this? And Margaret McGowan, she's sitting in her house today, worried that they're going to take her house. They put a lien on it already, and she doesn't know what to do.
And right now, they still keep sending me notices that they're going to put a lien on the house. Think about this all the time.
Yeah, just stupidity. There has been another arrest for this repeat offender in New Jersey who can't stop being a peeping Tom.
Police in Mapleshade Township, that's between Camden and Mount Laurel, got reports back in January of a man exposing himself to a woman outside a pharmacy. He then followed her to her apartment and did it again. Police arresting Joshua Cheatham. They've charged him with lewdness and peering into windows. The 25-year-old was arrested for doing the same thing last August. He was sent to the county jail and later released. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New Jersey.
A beloved Italian restaurant in Brooklyn going to close its doors, Sicilian restaurant, owned by Frank Buffa. It is called Ferdinando's Focacceria. Maybe you know it in Carroll Gardens. It's been there forever. And he says he's closing the restaurant because he's tired, which seems fair enough, and he wants to retire. But he says he's a little sad because he thinks he has the best Italian restaurant in the city.
I don't make a menu like a diner. You need the 3 hours to finish. No, that's the secret. You put it 3 dish, 3 fish, 3 meat. Simple. You can't go wrong. We have Italian beer, American beer. That's it. What you see, what you get.
Yeah, I like that guy. Ferdinando's has been in business 120 years. Buffa took it over from his father-in-law and has been holding down ever since. He says, but, he's tired. And, at some point you got to retire. So he says he wants to sell the restaurant, but, he says it's never going to be the same. And people in the neighborhood begging him to stay open. But he says, God, enough is enough already.
I work is, I would say, 75-hour week. So now if you multiply 52 years.
Right. 52 years.
75-hour week.
Right.
It's 100 years I work over here. 100 years.
Yeah, it probably feels like it's 100 years. Best of luck to him. He says he's going to hold on to the building, but so his family, when he passes away, can then own that building. But he says, no, the restaurant is going to close. There was this very cool meal at the Liberty Science Center that they served. They have a Titanic exhibit that just opened at the Liberty Science Museum in Jersey City. So to bring some people in, they actually served the Last Supper that they served on the Titanic before it hit the iceberg. And what's interesting is they actually recovered menus from the doomed ship. And there's lots of stuff on the menu that they hadn't heard of before, so they had to kind of recreate the whole thing.
I thought it would be wonderful to stage the Last Supper, so to speak, in the Titanic. What the first-class passengers had, this incredible multi-course meal that probably lasted 4 or 5 hours to maybe just a few minutes before they hit the iceberg. What they did was incredible to make it more opulent than even the fanciest 5-star hotels in the world at the time.
So they brought in Chef Gail Simmons, and she had no recipes to work with. She just had to look at what the meal was and try to recreate it. And she says it was kind of cool to try to do that.
A lot of it, over 100 years later, needs some interpretation. They're just dishes that we don't make anymore, that we don't eat anymore, and some of which we'd never really heard of.
We know the menu because some of the survivors took the menu and had it in their pockets.
Yeah, so they just had to change around some of it. The hors d'oeuvres like poached salmon and barley soup became a risotto. The guests may have been impressed enough to hang on to the menu itself, and the people who left this meal yesterday say it was fantastic.
Everything has been very fresh, very aesthetically pleasing, very beautiful.
In a restaurant setting, in a professional kitchen, on land, it's an enormous endeavor. But to do it at sea over 100 years ago is really quite remarkable.
Yeah, it really is remarkable. By the way, that Titanic exhibit has just opened up at the Liberty Science Center, and it has artifacts apparently that have never been seen before.